What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy. Welcome back to my vlog, kind of. Again, we're going more with, Bible-related stuff on this one. So, a little while back, I posted something on Facebook, kind of a phrase that came to my mind, or something I kind of almost came up with. Basically, I had heard a sermon at church a little bit before that, and was trying to kind of summarize one of the things that I got from it with that. So the phrase that I wound up posting on Facebook went something like, God doesn't need to yell at you if you're close to him. So I posted that, and it looked like maybe one or two people got a little bit of confusion from it. But either way, I thought maybe I'd get into a little more background, kind of dig deeper into what inspired me saying that, as well as kind of what I meant by it. So, in the sermon that kind of inspired this little quote from me, if you want to call it that, it was going through something that happened with Elijah, the prophet, and this was happening literally immediately after, or within the next day, pretty much, after Elijah had tested some false prophets of some other god, and they had failed, but he came out victorious, and basically it was this huge victory both for Elijah and for God, and having God's power and presence known. But immediately after this, Jezebel, who is the queen of Israel at the time, wants Elijah dead. And he catches word of this, and he runs for his life, basically. Which is a little odd, considering how much power God had just shown the previous day. But in any case, so Elijah's running for his life, and, he grows weary at some points, and there's an angel that comes to, give him food and keep him alive, basically, as he's on this journey. And this is the point where I'm very much trying to just kind of summarize things. So he journeys for 40 days, and comes to this one place that's known as the Mountain of God. I don't know for sure if he realized that's where he was, but that's where he ended up after all this traveling. And so he comes into this cave, and he's thinking, I'm just going to use this cave as some shelter overnight. He hears from God, and skipping ahead a little bit, okay, this is where I'm going to start directly quoting. Skipping ahead a little bit. Starting with, this is going to be from 1 Kings chapter 19. I'm going to start in verse 11 and go through most of 13, I guess. The Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. So, from this, I was just kind of thinking on kind of that set of verses specifically, and realizing that it was the gentle whisper that was what really spoke to Elijah and told him that God's presence was there. And it was the gentle whisper that kind of guided him. And you could tell just from the fact that he's hiding his face with his cloak after the fact that it's a very emotional experience for him. But what I got from that was it's not necessarily always the big gestures, the big spectacular things in our lives that God uses to speak to us when we are in a close relationship with him. Elijah being one of God's prophets and having God speak through him, obviously Elijah had a close relationship with God already. So when you have that kind of thing going on, God knows that you don't necessarily need some spectacular thing, some big sign to kind of guide you and direct you and lead you, or even to have some significant change come about. So that was what inspired me kind of coming up with the phrase and posting on Facebook the whole God doesn't need to yell at you when you're close to him. Now, that's not to say that, you don't still have those amazing kind of mountaintop style experiences even when you're close to God. That doesn't mean that there aren't some totally spectacular, amazing, wonderful things going on in your life when you're close to God. But not every single little bit of spiritual growth is necessarily going to come from something that is a proverbial smack in the face to your spiritual life. So that was really kind of the background, the intent, and everything surrounding that whole phrase that I came up with. And I know for me, it kind of has been encouraging to know that it's not always the super big changes in life. It's not always these grand experiences, like youth retreats or like moving or some, big thing in life. It's not always those events that have to happen for there to be some noticeable change. Honestly, a lot of times, while those types of experiences are great and they, tend to energize you and fill you up spiritually, those aren't necessarily the ones that cause the lasting changes. Because, sure, those things are great and they can inspire some great things within you. But the real sign of a lasting change comes from the minor little things that are different in your personal life afterwards. It's the little changes to your routine and your habits and your attitude that really kind of develop that steady change, that steady growth in moving closer to God. So, I don't know, I felt like I kind of wanted to get into that. I realized this was something that I posted like weeks ago, maybe even a month ago by now. And, it was something that really kind of spoke to me and that I have found kind of encouraging in a way. Because as I've been trying to sort through, kind of what's going on with my career and what I was fairly certain a few years ago was my calling towards youth ministry and all that kind of stuff. I've come to realize partially through looking at that passage and thinking about it a little bit more carefully that it's not always these super huge changes in your life that are always the signals of God moving you closer to where you're supposed to be. Sure, those things happen, but when you're already close to God, like I would hope that I am, I'd like to think that I'm in a fairly close relationship with God, it's not always going to be huge events in your life and these spectacular experiences that are going to be required for you to keep growing closer to God. Or in my case, it's not always going to be having to move somewhere different or have a different job or something like that. It's not always going to be those things that are going to bring me closer to God. It can just be going to church on Sunday and hearing a sermon that stands out, that really speaks to me, that I feel like is both relatable and also something that I can, use as inspiration to make some slight changes in my life for the better, to move me closer to God. So anyway, I think that about covers all of my thoughts and feelings and what I wanted to say in regards to that. If there's still some confusion as to what the heck I'm talking about here, feel free to leave a comment down below. I enjoy discussing stuff about the Bible and what we can gain from it. So, if you have any thoughts along that line, any other scripture passages you'd like me to kind of explain my thoughts on, again, comment down below with all that kind of stuff. And then, I guess, as always, there's, the usual ways to keep up with my videos and all that kind of stuff. That's all going to be down in the description. I'm not going to bog you down with that every single time. So, yeah. That's going to do it for this time around. I hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you in the next video, but in any case, stay cool, people.